everyone, my name is Melanie. I'm a senior psychology major with a minor in human development and family studies, and I'm from Milton, Massachusetts. Today we're going to talk about the College of Liberal Arts, or as we like to call it, COLA. Right now we're outside of Hempsmith Hall. Most people like to call it Hempsmith. It houses most of our College of Liberal Arts classes, such as like English, history, humanities, stuff like that. It is one of the older buildings on campus. It went over a pretty big renovation in 2016, but we're going to go inside. Is that good? Okay, let's go. Okay, so right now we're in a smaller classroom here in Hempsmith. This room holds about 40 students. This is kind of a typical class size for a liberal arts class. This is the size of my introductory English class that I had freshman year. We'll talk a little bit about classes in the liberal arts majors. So I personally came into UNH as an undeclared student, which means that I didn't have a major. So when I came in, I was kind of picking between a bunch of different things. And every undeclared student gets put into our COLA 401 class, which is basically just a class to help you learn how to pick a major. So they went through all of our interests and showed us all the different kinds of classes that we could take. And that was super helpful for me as a student who really had no idea what I wanted to do. Also coming into UNH, undeclared, you're given an undeclared advisor. So I had an advisor who I got to meet with at least once a semester, and she kind of walked me through picking classes and connected me with people in the different departments that I could go and talk to if I needed help. And then once I did finally declare psychology, I got assigned to a advisor in the psychology department, which was super helpful for me because she had a lot more information on the different psych classes that I had to take. You do have 2 years to pick a major if you are undeclared, and so you have to pick your major by like April of your sophomore year, and I didn't declare until March, so I waited pretty much as long as I could. But once I did, I got my advisor for the psych department, and that was super helpful for me. 1/3 of our students do come into UNH undeclared, so if you don't know what you want to do, that's totally fine, and you're definitely not alone in that at all. In terms of schedules at UNH, we have the standard schedule. You're probably going to have about 2 to 3 classes a day. Most students will take 4 classes a semester, and you do have full control over your schedule, just picking classes based on your major requirements and stuff like that. Another really awesome resource we have at UNH is CAPS, which is our Career and Professional Success. They help students with all things career internship related. So they do everything from holding like office hours for like internships, or they do resume building. They help with interview skills, stuff like that. They hold our fall and spring internship fairs, and so they'll have businesses come and like set up tables, and you can go and do like networking and stuff like that. They have people come from all around New Hampshire, but also from the Boston area and all around New England as well. And you can bring your resume and network, and it's really a great way to kind of get your foot in the door for a lot of different places. Some of the services that I've used at CAPS is their resume review. So I'll make an appointment with them, and they will look over my resume, make sure everything looks good. And that was super helpful for me because I got an internship over the summer, and I needed help with my resume to make sure that everything like looks normal for my first internship that I ever had. And then also for that internship, I had an interview over Zoom. And the day that I had my interview, they started doing construction in my apartment building, and it was super loud, and I didn't know what to do because I had an interview. And I emailed CAPS and I asked if they had a room that I could use, and they actually rent out interview rooms for like if you have an interview for literally my exact situation. And I emailed them the day of and they were able to get me in, and I had a quiet room for myself that I could use for my interview. So this was Hempsmith 103. Now we're going to go into Hempsmith 105, which is our teal room, which stands for Technology Enhanced Active Learning. You follow me? So this room has a really big emphasis on group work and technology. So as you can see, there's monitors at every desk, and the students can individually plug in their laptops to project onto each monitor in the room, and then the professors can also project onto all of the monitors at once. So it has a really big emphasis on group work and talking to your peers. Definitely not like an average lecture hall where you're just being lectured to by a professor. There's a lot more working with your peers, talking to people, and stuff like that. So now we're going to go to Horton Hall, which is our building for communications, history, political science. And we're going to go out this way. The room that we just walked through is just a little study room where students can hang out, do homework in between classes. It's really great if you live on or off campus because you have a place to do work during the day.
Here at UNH, there are 27 different residence halls, and out of those 27, 4 are exclusive for first-year students only. Those are Williamson, Christensen, Ward, and Alexander. Alexander is also the living community for undeclared students in the College of Liberal Arts. And for the rest of the residence halls, approximately 25% of the space is dedicated towards first-year students. And traditionally for first-year students, they live in doubles. And then once you become an upperclassman, the on-campus apartments and suite-style rooms become available to you as well. If you are interested in what each of these different rooms look like, stay tuned because in the next month, we'll be uploading a video showcasing these different styles of living. Also, on every floor of every residence halls are residential assistants, or RAs, and RAs are students who put on social events throughout the year, and they're there for general peer support. And bigger than the RA are residential hall directors, and unique to UNH, there is one residential hall director per building here on campus, and they're there for more programming, student mentoring, community building.
Okay, so we're gonna head up this way. Right now we're passing the MUB, which is the Memorial Union Building.
The Memorial Union Building, or what we like to call the MUB, is home to many different student clubs and organizations. There are a lot of academic clubs for all sorts of majors in the College of Liberal Arts. If you are interested in English, you can join the New Hampshire, which is the student-ran newspaper. English AEGIS showcases a wide variety of student poetry, short fiction, and black and white photography in the student magazine. The History Club organizes activities such as movie night, field trips, trivia night, participation in special history lectures at UNH, and more. There are different language clubs such as German and French, which focuses more on the cuisine and culture.
Up ahead here is Randall Hall, which is one of our residence halls, and it's part of the upper quad. And this is Horton Hall. So just before we go inside, I want to point out across the street is McConnell. That's the sister building for psychology. I also want to point out the fact that our walk was pretty quick. I would say the longest walk that you'll have between classes is roughly 10 minutes. Most walks are a lot shorter than that. So now we'll head inside. Over to the right, we have another one of the common area study spaces for students to do work in between classes. So right now we're in Horton 207. This is a larger class size. It holds about 78 students. Other classrooms in this building will hold about 40. Class size definitely varies a lot just based on what class you're in. I've had classes that are 150 students, and I've had classes that are less than 10. So it definitely varies based on the kind of class that you're taking. So in Horton, there aren't any digital labs, but in Hempsmith, where we just were, there's 6 digital labs. And those are photography, design, journalism, writing, technological writing, and communications. So I'm going to talk a little bit about lectures and different class styles. So this class is probably more of a lecture style where the professor will stand at the front, present slides to the students, and then you'll have homework usually based on those slides. Other classes are more discussion-based, which are usually my smaller classes, where your grades in the class are focused less on homework or exams and more on group work with others in the class or participation, kind of just what you can bring to the class on a daily basis. I personally find those ones to be a little bit more fun because you get to interact with your peers and learn more about them. So I really like those classes. In terms of office hours, professors are contractually obligated to hold office hours for their students. I've been to several of my professors' office hours just for help before an exam or questions just in general about the class. As a graduating senior right now, I've been going to my professors' office hours just to talk with them about different options for me for the future in terms of grad school or job help and stuff like that, and that's been super helpful for me. In terms of my favorite classes, so my favorite class that I've taken for psychology is abnormal behavior, which is a class that's based on different mental health disorders and stuff like that. and we talk about how they present themselves in people, and then treatment, which is stuff that I'm really into, so I really liked that class. But also at UNH, you don't just take classes for your major. We have classes that you take for our discovery program, which is just like kind of random classes in different subjects. So one of the classes that I took for my social sciences was called Making Babies, and it was about labor and delivery and pregnancy. And that was a class that I took actually in Horton, and I loved that class. It was just super interesting, and it was kind of one that I got to take for fun. But that one was really fun too. And then my favorite professor that I've had was one of my psych professors. Her name's Carrie Dudley. I took 3 classes with her. I took social psychology with her, research methods, and then a class called autobiographical memory, which was my smaller discussion-based class. And I really liked her teaching style, and I've been to her office hours a bunch, and we've gotten to build like a good relationship, which I really appreciate. Okay, so aside from the regular classroom experience at UNH, students also have the opportunity to get involved in various different research centers. One of these research centers is the CCRC, or Crimes Against Children Research Center. They provide research and develop statistics, and they send them to the public and law enforcement. They do a lot of work to do like preventative projects for these issues. In addition to that, we also have the Global Racial and Social Inequality Lab. Those are open to students, both graduate and undergraduate students, who are interested in social issues regarding inequalities, and they will lead workshops to try to make more inclusive syllabi and more inclusive classrooms as well. Outside of the specific centers that we have at UNH, students can also do individual student-led research, or they can do joint research with a professor, which I think is a little bit more common, just because then they have kind of a mentor to help them along the way. We also have the Undergraduate Research Conference, or the URC, and students can bring their research projects there and present them, and then they can kind of get more help and information from there. Okay, so now we're going to talk to one of the professors in the College of Liberal Arts who can tell us a little bit more about research and their teaching experience here at UNH.
I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, and had never been to New Hampshire before I got my job here. I went to school at Cornell University, studied history and biology. History was sort of my second major, but I ended up deciding that that's what I wanted to do for a career. So here I am as a history professor. I then went off to Yale for my PhD and completed that in 1994. So I've been at UNH since 1994. I live in Durham, just a couple miles away, with my wife, who's also a history professor, and 2 kids who are teenagers thinking about being historians themselves someday. And so we're quite fortunate to be here. And I have taught at the university all of my basically professional career, which is hard to imagine. You know what I love teaching about UNH, teaching in general, but particularly at UNH, is those moments where the students say, aha, and there's something that they've experienced that they haven't before. One example that always comes to mind, I teach American environmental history. And one of the books I use is Aldo Leopold's Sand County Almanac. And one day when we were reading it, a student walked into class and she was holding the book and she looked at me and she said, I'm looking at everything differently now. And so that's a book I will keep using in that class for as long as I can, because clearly it has an effect on students. I think also about some of the discussions about past events, particularly 19th century events that influence today, and students have not been exposed to them, whether it's Reconstruction in the South or the roots of the Spanish-American War, and they come out thinking, wow, this helps explain so many things today that I wouldn't have understood the background to. Just this morning, our foreign policy class, we chucked the plan and spent an hour talking about the crisis in Ukraine. And the ability to have students exchange ideas and think about what all this means is really rewarding. So my main courses are the history of U.S. foreign policy, but I also teach American environmental history. Those are upper division history classes. And then I teach the introductory U.S. survey, which from the Civil War to the present, which is known as History 406. So there's a good chance some of you watching this video will take History 406 in the next couple of years. It's a discovery historical perspectives class, and we try to do the sweep of American history from the Civil War to wherever we are in the 21st century. And then occasionally I'll teach things, upper division seminars and graduate seminars. But one of the pleasures of being department chair is I don't get to teach as much, which is disappointing. But the foreign policy classes are my main courses. They're 2 semesters broken at the start of World War I. And so I teach this semester, I'm teaching the 20th century foreign policy, which is from World War I up to 2022. So we'll end the semester with the current issues that the United States is facing. You know, it's a tricky thing because students struggle in different ways. So the first thing is just to have them come in and talk to me so I can find out what the issues are. It might be something simple like, I'm not sure what to write about for my final paper, and there are so many topics. It might be something a little more detailed, like I have an idea what I want to do for my final paper, but how do I start? Where do I begin? And so I can help them find sources and narrow the topic down, see what they want to do. One of my favorite stories from a few years ago, in my environmental history class, I had a student who was very quiet, and he had to come talk to me about his final research paper, and he didn't really know what to do. So I just started talking to him about what he'd like to do. And it turned out he liked to fix cars. He was a part-time amateur mechanic. So we started talking about his car, and he was talking about the catalytic converter. And I said, well, why do you think there's a catalytic converter on your car? And he thought, well, there was some environmental regulation. And that became his paper topic for writing a paper in my environmental history class, which then won the prize for the best paper in the history department that year. So a lot of it is just talking to the students and listening to what are their concerns, what are the things that might be causing them problems. Obviously, there are other kind of struggles sometimes people are having just adjusting to university life. And I can help say, have you talked to the people at the counseling service? Or let's talk about which problems are academic, which might be personal. And obviously, I'm not a psychologist. I can't help with the personal, but I can help direct students to the right places or the right agencies on campus. We do have a campus that's really supportive. You can get help for whatever you need, whether it is how do I adjust to college life, or how do I handle studying for my Spanish exam? All those, the range of things that we can help you with is quite remarkable. And part of my job as department chair, as an advisor, is to help you find those services. And then specifically with the class, if people say, I'm having trouble comprehending an idea, I'll say, let's talk through it. Or you're working on a paper, you don't know how to answer the particular question. Tell me what you've got so far, and we'll have a discussion that helps the student really figure out how to frame their own answer at the end of the day. So my research is on the history of the environment in American foreign policy, and I've written a couple of books on the ways in which the United States has worked to regulate the environment. One about a period 100 years ago, and then the second one about really global efforts to regulate whaling in the 20th century. Right now, I've been doing some research on the place of food deals between the United States and the Soviet Union in the 1970s. Not many people know that in 1972, the US sold a quarter of its grain crop to the Soviet Union, which is kind of remarkable given that we were in the middle of the Cold War, that the United States would sell the grain. And diplomatic historians have looked at those grain sales and found all sorts of interesting things. And while I'm interested in the diplomacy that allows two nations in a rival relationship to sell food to one another, I'm really more interested in the ramifications. And particularly, I'm interested in the ways in which the surplus food that the United States used to have before it sold it to the Russians was used as food aid around the world. Now it's not available as food aid. Now countries around the world that are looking for assistance don't have that American reserve. So what are they going to do? They're going to plant more themselves. They're going to do it with more intensive agricultural methods. So there are political and environmental side effects to these grain deals. And so far, the document I found that was most fascinating was from the government of Bangladesh, which was brand new in 1971. So here in 1973, the Bangladeshi prime minister sends a letter to Richard Nixon saying, how are we going to feed ourselves now that you no longer have a food surplus to give us when we're starving? We're going to have to go out in the open market and buy the food we can't afford. And that triggered a response of the US government about how they were going to balance out those interests. So I'm trying to do research on that, trying to figure out what exactly the environmental and political ramifications were of these huge food sales from the 1970s. So there are two pieces of advice that I think might appear to be contradictory. One is to maintain that school, non-school balance. Make sure that you're not so focused on school that you get too stressed out. You need to do the academic work, but I think sometimes people get really stressed, particularly about grades in their first semester. I have more than a few letters C on my transcript from my first couple of years. You can overcome that. It's more important that you have that balance, so you're taking care of yourself in all sorts of ways, physically and psychologically. But the other thing I would say, which might sound like it's contradictory, but it isn't, I don't think it is, which is look at your classes as a rare opportunity. You're never going to get an opportunity to spend 4 years taking anything from anthropology to zoology. Every university in the country has the pass-fail option or the audit option. If you think wildlife ecology is really cool, but you're a psychology major, take wildlife ecology, take a pass-fail, expand those horizons. There are so many opportunities at a university like UNH that sometimes I think people fail to see all of the opportunities. And part of that opportunity is that your faculty members are really happy to talk to you. All of us have office hours. All of us are very happy to make appointments with you as well. If you have a question, whether it's, I had a student in my office today talking about American foreign policy separate from the class, but also questions about the class, go talk to your faculty members. I think sometimes there's an impression like, oh, they're busy, they don't want to talk to me. We do want to talk to you. And it's in your interest. You may need to apply to grad school and you'll need letters of reference. You may help your grades by doing better by understanding the material better by talking to the faculty members. So it's important to keep the balance, but also look at all the opportunities and don't look at college as things where you're sort of just checking boxes to get through. My wife has one of her best friends who was an urban planning major, took an art history course as a discovery class, a general education class, not because she had not wanted to, but because she had to. She now has a PhD in art history because she went into that class with the attitude that, well, let me see what this is about. Maybe it will turn out to be really cool. And it did turn out to be really cool. A few years ago, we went out to visit her at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, where she was in charge of drawings, prints and drawings. And she was pulling Michelangelo's and Da Vinci's out of the drawer. She worked with these $1 million pieces of art because she paid attention to her art history class, which was not her major, but she was open about it. So just keep in mind that this is an incredible opportunity. Once you graduate, your boss isn't going to say, go take wildlife ecology because you feel like it. In grad school, they're not going to take, you want to learn about astronomy, go learn about astronomy, because you're going to be specialized after you graduate. So think about it as 4 years of incredible opportunities. Find out who your friends, most inspiring professors are. Take classes, even if they're hard. Challenge yourself, because in the long run, you're going to pay off. It's going to pay off if you've actually broadened your horizons, challenged yourself, made yourself a better writer. Those are the things that employers are looking for, but also the things that make life really interesting when you get out into your 30s and 40s and down the line, which I know is hard to imagine when you're 17 or 18, but it's not that far off. And soon you'll be saying, I'm really glad I took advantage of all those opportunities I had in college. So there are a lot of research opportunities at the university. Certainly there are the ones that you'll hear about, like IROP, UROP, REAP programs that students can get into. Every faculty member is willing to help you. History is a discipline where most people do our research on our own, but we also have students who are honors students who write their own research thesis. In your history upper division classes, you would be writing research papers. If you're going into a field like psychology or communication, you could probably work with a faculty member who's always looking. Faculty members are always looking for people to help them with research who are smart and driven. So the university has plenty of opportunities, whether in specific classes or the honors track, and you don't have to be in the honors college to be an honors and major student. You can always just do research independent studies on your own. Last semester, I had a student come to me. He was very interested in the idea of writing a research paper on Argentina's nuclear program in the 1970s. I didn't know Argentina had a nuclear program in the 1970s, but he had paid attention to a release of documents that the US government had given all of its documents on Argentina in the 1970s to Argentina, published them, and he was looking through and found articles on Argentina's nuclear program. So he went off on his own and wrote a paper, and he would come and talk to me every once in a while. We'd talk about the questions he had, the source material he had. That's the kind of thing that he's going to use as a writing sample to get into law school. And I think he's going to do pretty well because of that, because on his own, he did this research project. I certainly guided him some, but this was really a self-driven thing. So if you were a history major and you wanted to do more research, it would be very easy to do that on your own with faculty guidance. Many other departments in the College of Liberal Arts have faculty members who work directly with students and work on those research projects. So you'll get experience no matter what major you have.
Okay, so right now we're going to go to the Paul Creative Arts Center, most people call it the PCAC. It's home to our fine arts, theater, music, and dance.
There are a wide variety of student resources within the College of Liberal Arts that help students narrow down a career. The first is the Handshake app. The Handshake app can allow you to connect with the alumni network, which is made up of over 47,000 graduates from around the world. This is made up of Fulbright scholars, teachers, and scientists who've all graduated from UNH. You can talk with them and see what they have learned from UNH and how they have taken it and applied it to their careers. Also, through the Handshake app, you can meet with career coaches, and career coaches will help you build a resume, beef up your LinkedIn profile. They'll also help you look for jobs or internships. They'll also help you with interview preparation and networking. There are also career development courses within COLA that help students learn how to communicate their skills and talents with employers. You can also search for career exploration by major, so you can really narrow down a career for a major you are interested in. The PCAC has two main theaters, the Hennessey Theatre and the Johnson Theatre, with the Johnson Theatre being the bigger of the two. And in 2016, it was home to the primary Democratic debate, and that is just one of different political events that happens here at UNH. And in 2019 and early 2020, we had the presidential primary speaking series, in which a numerous amount of candidates from the 2020 election came to speak at UNH. Those include Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Bill Weld, Elizabeth Warren, Tom Steyer, Andrew Yang, Amy Klobuchar, and many more. These speakers spoke all throughout campus and were open to all students for them to get involved in the discussion.
Okay, so right now we're in the PCAC. There are two main theaters in this building, one of which is the Johnson Theatre, which is our larger theater. It holds about 667 students. That's where they have a lot of their bigger plays and productions. They also hosted the 2016 Democratic primary debate. And then right now we're in the Hennessey Theatre, which is a smaller black box theater, and this is where we have a lot of our student-led productions. So there are 3 different opportunities for students to take if they want to study off campus. We have semester in the city, study away, and study abroad. For semester in the city, students can go to Washington, D.C. for a semester, and they can work for government agencies, multinational corporations, nonprofits, and more. Or they can go to Boston for the semester, and they will do a 30-hour-a-week internship for a nonprofit organization that focuses on social change. And then they also have a weekly class component if they do the Boston option. And then we also have study away, where students can study at another college or university in the country, domestically or in Canada, which is a really great opportunity if students have wanted to study in like California or Colorado or whatever. They can take a semester off of UNH and go study out there. So lastly, we have our study abroad programs. We have over 500 different programs that students can partake in. If you want to go to a country that UNH doesn't have a specific program for, you can meet with your study abroad advisor and they can match you with a program in that country. We also have a couple of specific COLA programs that students can partake in, one of which is a semester in Budapest where you'll focus on the humanities and social justice. Secondly, we have a program in London where you can do British studies and also social sciences. And then if you don't want to go away for a whole semester, you can do a J-term or a summer abroad program. J-term is just over winter break, and then summer you go after the second semester is over. We also have 2 COLA-specific programs for those, one of which is 10 days in Cuba. It's called Discover Cuba. You'll immerse yourself in the Cuban culture, and then you learn about history and the arts. And then another program is in Ireland, so you'll do 10 days in Ireland, and for that one you would be more focused on contemporary literature. Whether it's music education or otherwise, UNH has several different options for students who are interested in studying education, both in 4 years and 5 years. For the 4-year program, students who are interested in music ed, phys ed, math education, or primary education can get their degree in 4 years. For the 5-year program, students who are interested in secondary education or special education can get their bachelor's degree and their master's degree in 5 years. For the special education program, most of those students will pair up with a human development or a psychology major. And then for the first 4 years of that degree, they'll be taking classes in their specialized field. And then for the 5th year, they'll be out student teaching, getting experience in the field based on their interest. So that concludes today's tour of the College of Liberal Arts here at UNH. If you have any additional questions, feel free to visit us online, and don't hesitate to reach out if you want to do that as well. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great evening.